first up, recap of the Ultimate Fighter, or Fight Night, I guess, because it was on first. And I really want to do it and have some things to say about the Ultimate Fighter, not so much. So, just let me pull up the results here. Okay, we saw 4 fights, but I guess I'll recap the other card results. But we didn't see the fights, so it's hard to say. Consequently, I was watching this with Miz and Divine Massacre the whole time, with ByronGiant and Archangel stepping in on Skype. First up, Tim McKenzie, Aaron Simpson. Aaron Simpson by knockout first round. Rob Kimmins taps out Joe Vetipo in the first round. George Rivera wins a split decision against Neeson Osterneck. Tim Crater by submission in the second round over Nick Catone. Brock Larson by submission in the first round over Iron Jaw Jesse Saunders. Ricardo Almeida by UD over Matt Horwich. Gleason Tuao by UD over Jeremy Stevens, and then on to the main card. Junie, the Lunatic Browning versus Cole Mangrino Miller. Basically, Cole lands the only strike of real note in this fight and finishes with a jumping guillotine, which was pretty cool, and gave a good yelling at Junie Allen Browning after the fight. Good to see Junie lose, as always. I don't hate the guy as much as I did during the Ultimate Fighter, because I think he may legitimately have a problem. At the same time, is that the kind of guy you really want to be giving repeated second chances to? I don't know. Junie, yeah, they'll probably give him someone he can beat, because Dana White has the massive hard-on for him. At the same time, I really can't think of who that is currently on a UFC contract, and that's a problem. As for Cole Miller, he called out the winner of Spencer Fisher-Cal Uno. I'd like to see that fight. I think both of those guys would make a good matchup with him, and an exciting fight. Tyson Griffin versus Rafael Dos Anjos. This is the repetitive, same fight that Tyson Griffin seems to continuously get in the UFC, and it does annoy me to a certain degree, and it's a very large degree. I'll pull up his fight finder, and I'll kind of allude to what I mean if you're not following me. Since Tyson Griffin debuted against David Lee at the UFC 63, he has not finished a fighter. Finished David Lee, nothing since. He has lost 2 decisions to Sean Shirk and Frankie Edgar, and won a controversial decision over Clay Guida. Now, his other 4 fights, BJJ black belts with little stand-up. Thiago Tavares, who may have some stand-up, that's the only arguable one. Gleason Tibau, Marcus Aurelio, and Rafael Dos Anjos. It's the same fight repetitively, in my opinion. You're fighting a BJJ black belt who cannot take you down, and thus really isn't a hell of a threat to you. Unless you fight stupid. He fought stupid against Tavares, taking him down. Seemed to learn from that, keeping the fight outstanding with Tibau and Aurelio. Did the same thing, got stupid here against Dos Anjos, still wins the UD. Just because Dos Anjos couldn't finish, but if I'm in Tyson Griffin's corner, I'm taking a steel chair and beating him with it until he does not take down BJJ black belts anymore. That's all there is to it. Dos Anjos, this may be the last we've seen of him. This is 2 losses in a row, even though he looked good at parts of both losses. I'd like to see him fight again. I just don't think I think there's a good chance he might not. Tyson Griffin, if they throw him another BJJ black belt, I'm going to be just, what are you doing? But he seems to have very bad luck fighting anything else. I guess that's really the only thing that can be said. I'm not sure who I really want to see him fight. He's kind of exciting at times. His fights with Frankie Edgar and Sean Shirk were very exciting, but those are both fights he lost. His fights that he wins, except for the Thiago Tavares fight and Clay Guida, not too exciting. Then we had Ryan Darth Vader versus Carmelo Marrero in the worst use of a guard ever seen to mankind. Thank you, Carmelo Marrero, for making white belts everywhere feel better about themselves. You train at the ATT, but you apparently never have heard of how to maintain a guard and what a guard even is. His only ground skills appeared to be holding on to Ryan Bader's arm and not really doing anything with it. Bader looked really good in the first round, passing the guard like no one's business, going for subs. He was going for subs the whole night, but he never finished one, which kind of worries me. He had a gator roll a good, a couple times there, and had his back a couple times. Didn't do anything with that either. And If you could have heard me and Divine Massacre Sean talking during this fight, we really should have recorded it because we were coming up with some good stuff in our just utter frustration at watching that fight. Who's next for Bader? Probably someone that he can beat, because, you know, tough fighters get protection. This is ridiculous. They brought a guy back who they had previously cut to fight Ryan Bader. I don't know what to say on that. He apparently was on a roll, but I looked at his fight finder, no notable names on that roll. For Marrero, back to the minor leagues with you. And hopefully we won't see you again unless you learn what a guard is. Finally, in the fight of the night, we had Carlos the Natural Born Killer Condit versus Martin the Hitman Campman. This was a good fight all the way. It was a little bit different than I expected. Both guys really trying to use their wrestling a lot more than I anticipated, and both guys really not having the greatest wrestling, so that made for interesting moments. But some good transitions on the ground, a couple of good submission attempts by both guys. Both of them love the guillotine. Love it. Some good striking combinations when it was on the feet. Neither of these guys really had that one-punch KO power, which I think is what kind of limits them on the feet, because, let's face it, I mean, they're both good technical strikers, but it's like, if you can't do damage with it, it's a little bit hard. Both need to work on their wrestling. Both need to get some KO power, if there's any way really to do that. Both have pretty good grappling skills, and it was a really entertaining fight. I scored a 29-28 for Condit, so I agreed with Cecil Peoples. Feel a little dirty about that, just a little bit. But Campman had the conclusively, you know, awesome-looking third round, which was the only round that was definitively 2-1 fighter. The other two rounds were kind of a little bit different. I would say the second round is the linchpin. How you saw the second round is how you saw that fight, because I think the first probably went to Condit, and the third probably went to Campman. And that's pretty much all there was to say about that fight, but it was a really good fight. I really enjoyed it. It lived up to the hype. Okay, then we went to the Ultimate Fighter British edition, because this was an entirely British episode. You saw Rich Franklin and Dan Harrison there, because this apparently was before their fight, before Dan was named the coach. Just going over the welterweight fights, and I'm doing this in alphabetical order according to the website, not necessarily the order they took place in. Dean Amersing versus Alex Reed. I paid so little attention to this fight that I thought Alex Reed won, and it was pretty hilarious because I hate Alex Reed, and I thought it was a joke. He was on there when I saw him. He looks like a cross between Frank Shamrock and no, he just really looks like a British version of Frank Shamrock. Now that I think about it, go figure. He has triangles off the ground. His striking looked terrible, and hopefully we will never ever see Alex Reed in a legitimate fight ever again, because I don't think it's possible for him to be in a legitimate fight. He is that annoying, that bad, and your nickname is the Reedinator. Please retire. James Bateman. He was the dude that fought David Faulkner. David Faulkner apparently is a leg lock guy out of a Wolf Slayer. Like a lot of these guys. Michael Bisping pulling a couple strings. Faulkner be a heel hook. Nothing much else to say on the matter. Tommy Maguire versus Nicholas something. Tommy Maguire losing to... I will hopefully figure out how to say Nicholas's name before the end of the season. Losing to Nicholas be a knockout. Tommy Maguire was terrible. His spirit was all wrong. He had numerous physique problems. He appeared to have really not a lot of skill, other than the ability to kind of lay on Nick. That's all there's to it. Shea Mills, who was one guy I was kind of looking forward to, and was disappointed to see he lost to James Wilkes, who rounds off the team via heel hook. James Wilkes looked pretty good. Trains apparently with Eric Paulson in Orange County since 2000. So I'm a little confused as to how he's British anymore. But that's just me. But he was born there, so, you know, whatever. I guess that's your criteria. Lightweights, James Bryant, or Bryan, pardon me. Who did he fight again? James Bryant. He fought Jeff Lawson. He was the dude that got schooled by Jeff Lawson. Good on Jeff Lawson. He's the best lightweight of the bunch, I think. Dan James versus Martin Stapleton. Martin Stapleton outclasses Dan James. I looked him up. He actually looks kind of impressive. I hadn't heard of him before this, but he's a good tie. Looks like a good tie striker with some ground skills. Gary Kelly, a guy who Michael Bisping described as aggressive. That's it. And when your teammate can't do much more than that, you have a problem. And it showed. He lost to Andre Wimmer via knockout. Andre Wimmer, very raw. If he taught some skills, he could be a threat. But I don't know exactly how fast he'll pick anything up. Ross Pearson versus AJ Wen. AJ Wen gets props for having balls. and coming out of the corner after taking one hell of a hit and one hell of a beating. Other than that, Ross Pearson, basically another Ross Point and Ross Mason, only it seems like he may be actually a little smarter. It seems like if your name's Ross, you have to have the warrior spirit and have balls if you're British. And that was the fights. We look forward to the Americans next week. Hopefully it'll be better, but apparently the American team is intentionally watered down to allow the British fighters to have a chance. I'm not looking forward to this season. Anyways, that's all. Later.